Hello everyone, I'm very excited to get back to NaNoWriMo. I did a little over 3,000 words yesterday. My goal today is 5,000 words, so I may actually have to do a little less than 2,500 today in order to get done. So that should work out well, I think. Always good to get ahead. I don't know if I'm going to stay ahead, but I'll probably stay on track. So that's probably a realistic goal for me. The novel I'm writing is Rise Again. It's a sci fi novel. And again, I got 3,000 words done, which took me a little bit into chapter 3. So we kind of have an odd situation going here where the story of a character is told from the perspective of other people, and we don't yet know what's going on. But it appears to be there's at least a supernatural or scientific element that changes what is ordinary in this particular case. So we're in chapter 3, and a series of words and numbers make up the chapter titles. And I'll go ahead and reread this small section of chapter 3, and then I'm going to jump back into writing it. I leaned close to his ear on the convalescing table. I tended to whisper to the unidentified patients who came into my care. It was habit. Secrets are a way of life, and I tried to protect others by keeping their secrets as long as I can. That was not easy in my line of work, but it was necessary insofar as it was possible. Sir, I'm Aveline Miracle. I am your ward angel tonight. You are at the Prime Street Sanitarium in the Far Bay District in New Hampshire. What is your name, sir? I glanced over my shoulder. The pair of constabularies took a step closer. They were already watching this man when he was brought in by conveyance. I'm not sure if my cutting them a look raised their suspicions higher, but I'm certain it didn't help. Trey, the man said in a grunt that might not have been a word. Trey? I thought at the time and looked at the metal counter next to his bed. There was nothing there. No medicines, nor instruments had been laid out. He had no possessions on him either. I imagined anything he possessed was stolen by whomever put him into this state. Sir, I don't have anything for you here. Do you desire water? He cleared his throat, and I heard the pair shuffle even closer behind me. I fought the temptation to look this time. No, the man said, a little clearer and stronger. My name is Trey. Do you have identity permits? I whispered as low as I could. He chuckled. It could have been a cough, but then he said, at least you're speaking English, sort of. All right, let's dive into this. Again, I'm at a little over 3,000, and we're going to try and hit 5,000 today. That threw me off. The injured, the feeble-minded, and the drugged. Let's see if we can spell a few things right while we're here. All right, the feeble-minded and the drugged said all sorts of nonsensical things when they ended up in my ward. I had developed the habit of either ignoring their more insane proclamations or nodding along. Alright, proclamations or nodding along if it helped soothe them for a moment. English was a nationality, not a language. It would be like saying someone spoke Canadian or Avalonian. Very odd. I assume he meant again, I'm writing a few key things down here to keep track of some of the changes in these places. I assume he meant English. That meant maybe he spoke something else naturally. He sounded a bit Eastern European. I might have picked up a touch of Germanic in his vowels, but it was hard to tell. That might mean he was here illegally. Let's change that. Let's say criminally. That might explain his lack of permits. That might explain his lack of permits and identifying markings. This probably meant I was healing him for a long confinement. Scan him. One of the constable. Am I spelling this right? Okay. Trying to get fancy with my use of terms here, but I think it's necessary for this particular chapter. Scan him, one of the constabularies said, we need to know who he is. The other crowded me at the opposite shoulder. He had nothing to say, but these guys could not be caught not crowding someone. Their compatriots would think they were slipping. A little room, please, sirs. They backed up, but not enough for me to no longer feel their breath on my neck. I could smell whatever it was they had spilled on their uniforms before coming in tonight, but I could not identify that either. I took up the scanner from under the edge of the bed, placing my thumb on the safety. I got a false scan. It gave a unpleasant buzz. I repeated it. I repeated it twice more. What's the problem? Let's change this. What's the difficulty? Yeah. What's the difficulty here? The second fellow did not want to be seen slipping. Scanner isn't registering. The equipment here is old, you know. All sorts of malfunctions. The second fellow said I'd never come here even if I was about to lose an arm. The first one laughed at that a little too hard. They both lightened. I silenced the device as they guffawed. I may be getting a little too fancy for my own good. Okay, I'm spelled that. I silenced the device as they guffawed. I got a scan, but no identification. Pretty much as I expected. Okay. Pretty much as I expected. What I didn't expect were the series of implants in his skin. I turned the scanner off and stowed it. For a moment, I feared it might be a bomb, an explosive. I'd heard of such things in other parts of the world, but this man had no surgical scars, not even old ones. Still, there was something under his skin. Could one of you dear fellows retrieve me? I don't need a comma there. Could one of you dear fellows retrieve me a mobile scanner? That's not our job, dear. The second one had turned on his heel, and I saw in his eyes that he feared he'd been caught slipping again. Yeah, not our job. We need this guy identified. He waved at the table as if I might have forgotten the subject of our discussion. There's violence and banditry about tonight. The Finks are rounding up the ruffians. We need to know this guy's part in it. Finks referred to the breakers, as in riot breakers. The street called them breakers mostly because of what they did to the skulls, arms, and ribs of anyone who got in their way. I spent many nights patching up criminals bound for midnight trials and old ladies who got who were in the wrong place at the wrong time. If I called them finks, these two might fly into a rage at me, but they did so without a second thought. The first fellow continued. We can watch him while you find a working scanner in this pit. It'll have to wait then, I said. Can't walk away from a different word besides trauma. I'll just use the word trauma, why not? Can't walk away from a trauma until I am sure he's stable. Looks stable to me. The second guy said. Well, I said, sometimes things aren't as they look. I'll work as fast as I can without a scanner. The first one said, I think you should. Fortunately, he trailed off from the commotion of more bodies conveying through our ward to one for more severe cases. The breakers were doing their best work tonight. The constabularies, I'll be glad when I move on from this chapter and don't have to keep using that word. The constabularies could care less about the injured, I'm sure. Their attention fell on the persecutor in bright red. When the superior officer met eyes with my two friends, he apparently gave them a subtle signal to approach. When the superior officer met eyes with my two friends, he apparently gave them a subtle signal to approach because they both scampered off without hesitation. I pulled the scanner again and let it do its work. The implants were of no origin I could identify. I couldn't even find a small incision point of any age anywhere on this guy's, on, let's say, this patient's body. Some of the connections went down to the bone. They weren't metal, though. I could, the scanner gave no clue what they were. His bones were intact. No organ ruptures, but he might have been deeply bruised, including one of his kidneys. Internal bleeding might show up later. I locked back in the scanner, but then set about erasing the findings in the table's computer. Alright, so moving right along here, let's get a little closer. It was his clothing that threw me. I've seen plenty of dregs pass through here wearing all manner of things they pulled from disposals. This man's coat, as matted and filthy as it was, had been made, well, that's passive, I'm wording this badly. This man's coat, as matted and filthy as it was, proved to be hide and fur. The fur was from a bear and the hide from deer. Although deer were rare, they still existed. Avalonian bears being extinct raised a real question about a coat that should probably be hanging in a museum as opposed to the dirty back of a dreg. He had long hair and a thick beard that was the most ordinary thing about him. Alright. His boots also hide, had fecal matter on them. Not unusual. Animal fecal matter at that. Still not unusual. The scanner failed to identify species that produced the scat, but not unusual either. The unusual bit was very non-scientific. He smelled of manure, not simple filth. It was a richer sweeter smell with the constellaries out of the range of my senses. With the constabularies out of the range of my senses, I could smell what reminded me of my uncle's farm when I was a child. There was no farm near Hampshire that a man could walk from and still retain that smell. As I let my imagination go, I could smell fresh grasses and blooming weeds on him. That was probably the fantasy. Who are you? I asked with a little less stealth and a little more. Who are you? I asked with a little less stealth and a little more urgency. There's not much time. Okay, let me reverse this. I have a bad habit of when I'm forming a sentence in my head, I have a bad habit of putting one clause first and then the if clause, the conditional clause after, because that's kind of just how it comes to me, which is fine some of the time, but that's not how everybody talks all the time, so I try to reverse it. If you have something to tell me, there's not much time before I can't help you anymore. I need to get back to my notebook. I need to get out of here. I was given pause again. What did he mean by notebook? Was that a technology like the alien implants within him? Was it something made of paper? A type of book? Perhaps a journal? Where did you leave it? I think I dropped it in the alley where I got beat up. I had to process his odd phrasing again. He mentioned English earlier. I heard of knocking up, meaning to wake someone. Perhaps beat up was such a phrase for being attacked. No idea what an alley was. I thought maybe that was a military word. I seemed to recall hearing it in relation to bombing runs in war. Are you a soldier? The dreg laughed. I've been lots of things, trying to win a war still, but clearly I'm no soldier, or they wouldn't have brought me in on my back like this. Soldiers ended up on their backs in wards all the time. But as I did with the crazier ones, I just nodded along. Can I send someone out to look for it for you? I don't think so. I need to leave. I can do that right here and now, but it might cause trouble. I'd like to get the notebook. There is too much in there to remember without it. Okay. Alright, where does this conversation go? I need her to make a choice here. Alright. Not she. I tilted my head in a way that I hoped guided his attention without drawing anyone else's. Do you recognize those men by the persecutor? He stared at me in a blank way that did not seem promising. He started to rise, but I placed a hand on his shoulder. Use stealth, I said. He smiled at me through his wild beard. He then turned his head and extended his neck to see around my hip. I'm not sure, he said. Should I? They came in with your conveyance. I think they may have been the ones to find you. Okay. Okay, what? I asked. I did not know the abbreviation. Okay, they... Now let me have him do it. Okay, they brought me in. Is there a problem? I said, were you part of the disturbances tonight? The only disturbance I was part of was getting my head bounced off the street by a couple assholes who were mad at me for not having cash or credit cards on me. I assumed he was talking about opiates. Well, let's do it. Opiums. So, okay, that's fine. Opiums of some type. He was a... what would they call a drug dealer? He was a vice man. Viceman? Okay. The notebook he wanted probably contained some expensive vices he did not care to lose. That explained his attack, and he probably had no political leanings at all. He just had his deadly trade. I was less interested in helping him. Those men will probably have a few questions for you once you are expelled from the ward. He smiled at me again, like I was telling a joke. Most vicemen found lots of serious things funny. I've discovered. Take a... Now let's have him say something. He said, I haven't even taken a test yet. How am I already expelled? We'll run scans soon. We'll run scans soon. But you appear to have no immediate injuries. We'll check again for bleeding in a moment. Stay here. I turned with the intent of going to assist in the adjoining ward where more injuries poured past our ward without pause. It was one of those nights. He called to my back. Called at my back. Alright, what would he say at this point? We need to have a parting word and maybe something that captures her attention. She thought he meant medical testing. He thought expelled related to schools because it wasn't a word he normally associated with hospitals. He called back. Where is the closest exit? I don't know what you're talking about, sir. I kept going and almost made it. No, we need to add something in here. We need to add something in here. Okay. I don't know what you're talking about, sir. I turned on him and looked at that broad smile again. I read it as dismissive. Bored angels are honored for our long suffering. But I wasn't having the best night. So I thought of something to remove the smile from his face, and it worked. Can you explain the implants under your skin all along your bones, sir? His eyes widened and his mouth drew into a tight, pale line. Usually that meant fear, but I also saw it on men who were going to try their best to lie away their guilt. He surprised me. I'd never be able to explain it. How do I leave here in safety without being caught or captured or detained, or however you say that in this place? If I get caught, there will be great trouble for more people than just me. That sounded like the truth, and I wasn't expecting that. The last bit about people getting hurt sounded like a threat, and I heard those day and night from constabularies and criminals alike. I turned my back and left without another word. I made it as far as the sortie to the, let's say, the sortie corridor to the next ward when metal equipment crashed to the floor behind me. Cries, let's do a new sentence. Cries rose from the Cries rose from the ward. Cries rose in the ward throughout. Is that one word? Yep. Throughout the ward, from angels and patients both. Now she uses the word alike, so we'll do alike. The constabularies drew their weapons, and I was sure they would kill any patient unlucky enough to get between them and this strange fellow who called himself Trey. I moved around to the what would they call reception? Let's come up with something different. Okay, the triage is something. I moved around to the sorting desk and reached the button to open the doors. As I hoped, Trey took a side portal into the storage space, and the constabularies, along with their persecutor, moved to the open doors to the street instead. Moving away from the desk to avoid incriminating myself, I circled around to the offices. It was a busy night and getting crazier, so I had the place to myself. I hitting a button on my boss's desk. Another unnoticed door opened. Trey burst forth as if on cue. We met eyes. Nothing special passed between us. We did not have any connection that I would have admitted 2. He nodded. I stared stony. He ran away. That should have been the end of it. But we met eyes. And while I had no not compassion, while I had no sympathy for him or what I believed he had done with his life, while I had no sympathy for him or what I believed he had done with his life, I was curious. As with all word and now that got me in trouble, as my mother always warned me it would. As with all ward angels, I took my position, partly because it was easiest for my gender, but also because I wanted to help. Beyond that, I was wildly curious. I wanted to know how everything worked, especially if it was something that was none of my business. I was curious about his origins. How does a viceman conduct business when he understands so few of the words? What were those implants, and how did he even have them? Not to mention, what could they be for? I stepped outside and followed behind him for all those reasons and none. I told myself that the way I had spoken to him had sent him away. The only reason I helped him escape was because I wanted the breaking to go on outside and not in the ward. The truth is there may be no reason at all why we make impulse choices as I did that night. It may, perhaps, I just wanted to see what a notebook was. I caught up to him in the void between buildings. It appeared a notebook was a journal of sorts. This one had seen better days. It was eaten away at the edges and was now held together by a spiral of metal wire at the top of the leaves. He stuffed, no, let's have heard, he stowed it away in his pocket and pulled up one hide covered arm. Whatever he did next, the implants glowed bright enough to see through his flesh. Alright, I want to add one thing up here. Where did he get bear fur? Okay, I think we're about done with this chapter, so let me wrap this one up. I'm past my 5,000, so that's good. But I want to end this chapter and then move forward, and we're about there. Whatever he did next, the implants glowed bright enough to see through his flesh. I stepped forward instead of back. That moment is both clear in my memory and blurred at the edges. I believe I thought he was in danger. That what was happening under his skin was not meant to be. Perhaps it isn't meant to be, but I know now he activated his implants on purpose. tray. He turned as the power rippled out of him and around us both. His eyes glowed, as did the inside of his mouth. His eyes glowed, as did the inside of his mouth, as he shouted. His voice echoed. Get away. Before I could take what might have been the most important instruction of my life, we left my world, and I will probably never see it again. Alright, let me put down the next chapter. Alright. Okay. Separatist denominations. Okay. So the next chapter is chapter 4. I was having to move a note down from my last chapter, something I didn't use there that I want to use in the next one. Alright, now again, these chapter titles are odd, but they do serve a purpose later. Post End 160 Theocracy. I may abbreviate that later, but I'm going to write the whole thing out now. 4 No West EXP 14 UNK shift question mark. Okay, so that is the next chapter, and we will jump into that next time. So I am currently at 5,554 words. Now here's my problem with word counts, one of many. I talked about this yesterday. Yesterday I finished at 3,131, so 3131. Now I'm at 5554. So like there's this temptation that I go in and just add one more word so that it's 5555. One of the normally with word count I don't even I don't track day to day. So like I would have a word minimum on this story if I were writing it for anything other than NaNoWriMo. Once I passed that word minimum, I would just write as far as I went, whether it was the end of the chapter or not, whether it was 5,000 words or not, whatever my minimum was. Once I got past that, I wouldn't even track the number. Like I wouldn't pay attention to what the word count was, other than making sure that I'm making the novel the length it needs to be. But I'm going to fight that temptation and leave it 5554 because that's a good place to stop. I don't need to write the word "the" at the beginning of this to make it even though there is a great desire in me to do that. So I'm going to we're at the beginning of that story. I'm going to go into the NaNoWriMo site and update my my word count. I'm also going to look at a couple other authors that I'm buddies with. We're going to look at their word counts. I got their permission before I did this, and we're going to look at a couple of their Amazon pages to see some of the books that they've written that I need to read, and some that I have read that I really enjoy very much. So we're now on the NaNoWriMo site. I did 3131 yesterday. I've done NaNoWriMo in the past, but it was on my phone and the site looked different, so I don't think I have the same account anymore. So it didn't track my previous goals and things like that. At the same time, I've done NaNoWriMo where I haven't used the site at all. Part of that was my own neuroses when it comes to word counts, but some of it was just being a curmudgeon too, I think. So I'm working on that now. So 3131 was yesterday. Now it says that I updated twice yesterday, so I think maybe I clicked a button more than once and got credit for 2 updates when I really didn't. I only updated 1 time. So I did not earn that badge that they gave me there. Just want to be clear. I don't want to steal any valor. Okay, so I'm going to do the total words. So that is 5554. I guess we pick how happy we are, and I'm extremely happy. Why wouldn't I be? Update progress, and now we're at 5554. I got a 2-day streak going. All right, they took away the update twice in a day, so I'm square on that. Let's take a look at a couple of my buddies. So you'll get to look at just me for a moment while I find my buddies. Not all of them have given me permission to talk about them, so I don't want to show everybody on my buddy list. Let's see how Armand Rosamelia's is doing. I don't know if he's updated yet today. We talked about him yesterday. He's still at 4,092. So he hasn't updated for today. I'm sure he's going to write more. That's where he was at the end of yesterday. So he's well ahead of me there. I imagine he's going to pass me again today. And that is a well-deserved accolade on his part. All right, so let's see what J.C. Walsh is doing. All right, J.C. Walsh is the author of Death Highway Book 1. He's fairly new to writing. He's doing a lot of work with it. Death Highway, the first book, is really great. It's a beautifully written first novel. So if you're looking for something, look for Death Highway by J.C. Walsh. He leans into cosmic horror a bit, but then kind of has sort of his own style to it. He's pretty well read. I actually didn't know him very well before we shared a room at the at one of the conventions. My brain is blanking on me here, and kind of got to talk to him about writing and things like that. He's very excited, very enthusiastic. This is yesterday's goal, so he basically made the 1667 or whatever. That's the daily count to get to 50,000 in 30 days. So we don't have today's writing in there yet. He tends to write on his lunch break, and he writes after work and things like that. So getting pretty motivated. I'm excited to see the next book in that little series he has going. I'm not sure if it's going to be 2 books or 3 books or more, but I really enjoyed the first one. It was an impressive first novel. All right, let's take a look at another sort of newcomer to writing, Alex from Iowa. He is a good friend of the show, The Mondo Method. Armand Rosamelia and Chuck Buda run that podcast that helps writers, and so he's close in that circle of people. All right, Alex has done a number of short stories up to this point, and has been in a few anthologies. I believe he's doing a novel. I'm not sure if this was a collection or not originally, but he's doing a novel of 50,000 words, Iowa Creature Feature. Horror supernatural. I'm telling you, just based on that title, I'm interested in seeing what he comes up with. I think this may be yesterday's numbers. I'm not sure if he's updated today, but 2557 is really good for a first day. And well, he's updated 2 days in a row, so maybe this is the first update today. He updated more than once yesterday. I do know that. He tends to write in bursts. There's the Mondo Method. The name comes from Armand Rosamelia, who basically, his method, I believe, is 15-minute sprints and then 45 minutes of other things he needs to work on, and doing 15 minutes each hour that he's doing in the writing day, so kind of give his mind a break. Armand Rosamelia writes pretty fast, so he gets a lot of words done in that 15 minutes and then sort of recharges in between. I've seen Alex do bursts where he gets between 300 and 400 words. He'll post on Twitter. A lot of the guys that do the Mondo Method have a hashtag on Twitter, Mondo Method, Mando method. They also go by Mondo Mafia sometimes too, I believe. But on Sundays in particular, here in NaNoWriMo, they're doing it all month. But on Sundays in particular, they'll post word counts and that kind of thing. And Alex, very often, each of his Mondo method sprints will get him between 300 and 400 words, and so he'll add those up as he goes along. So doing a good job so far. We're trying to encourage each other as we go along. Yesterday, I have a video on my YouTube channel yesterday where I talked about Jessica McHugh, Armand Rosamelia, and Tim Meyer. Today, let me take a look at John Quick. John Quick is not new to writing. He's been doing this a little while, and he is notorious for writing a lot and quickly. So let's take a look at his area. He's doing a horror supernatural novel called Homecoming, and he's 6,503 words. He's already updated for today. I don't think he's done for the day, though, so I imagine he's probably going to get some more writing in. Let's take a peek at his Amazon page. Savage Mountain I have read. I was trying to think that I hadn't read very much of his work, but I have read Savage Mountain, and it's very good. Very much a sort of 70s out in the woods crime and crime fighters kind of ending up in a conflict out in the wilderness type thing. There's a lot more to that story than that, but that's kind of my best quick pitch on that book. I've read a lot of his short fiction, so he has a number of things like that. He is a consistently good writer, so I'm confident in picking up one of his books. I like some of the anthologies he's in and short story collections because, like I said, I've enjoyed the short stories I've read from him. I enjoyed Savage Mountain, and I should check out some of these others while I'm at it. Going back to Nano, I would also like to look at Chuck Buda today. He has a number of books that I enjoy very much. So let's look at his author page here on Nano. I believe this was his update yesterday. He updated more than once yesterday. He hasn't updated today. So this is what he accomplished yesterday, 2,388. He and some of the other guys did a midnight writing run. So we did sort of a kickoff type thing that was live streamed on Facebook. And a few people participated in that. And then a lot of them started writing at midnight. I did not. I should have gone to bed because I ended up staying up watching TV and stuff. But I didn't end up writing that night. I wrote later yesterday. And, of course, I'm doing these videos each time I write for NaNoWriMo. So this was his accomplishment yesterday. So got off to a good start. Chuck Buda has expressed that he doesn't particularly like the NaNoWriMo process. He doesn't like being teased about it. I know that. So a lot of the guys will go back and forth, kind of teasing each other about who's ahead and who's not. He doesn't respond well to that, I don't think. But then also with work and some other things going on, sometimes he gets caught falling behind and then doesn't, sort of feels like he failed even though he got some writing done. Corral of Blood is going to be the next book in his Son of Earp series, which is sort of a supernatural Western thing. And I really like those books. They are extremely good. Looking at his site, Caged is a zombie series set inside a prison, and he's finishing up the last few of those books. Pay Up and Die is part of the Debt Collector series. So that Debt Collector series, kind of a guy caught in a bad situation, trying to take care of his family, ends up working for some folks involved in crime. Summoner of Souls, I believe, is the first book in the Sons of Earp series. I don't remember which titles go where. Desert Fangs is the latest, and it looks like Corral of Blood is the one he's working on now. Sort of supernatural meets the Wild West, and I really love those books. I think they're some of his best work. He's done some collaborative work with Armand Rosamelia that is good. He's been in several anthologies, so doing very well with himself there. So it looks like my friends are doing a good job of keeping up with NaNoWriMo, and really proud of all of them, and want to keep encouraging them. I think one of the problems with Nano sometimes is that it we focus on the stuff that discourages us, so falling behind, maybe not getting to 50,000 words, maybe having a bad day of writing. And what it's really meant to do is encourage. So if we can kind of push each other to keep writing, keep up, keep at it, even if you fall behind, I think it can develop a habit. And if you handle it right, you don't burn out as well.